Hey, Mine University students, before we get to the podcast, we just want to tell you about a comic book. Now, on the show, we talk about lots of comic books from very different creators, and we want to tell you about our comic book. Yeah, that's right. Ashley and I have made a comic book. It's called Jupiter Jet, and it's going to hit stores December 6th. Now, you might be asking, hey, Jason and Ashley, why are you talking about this so early? Well, Ashley, why are we talking about this so early?
Well, because retailers are ordering their copy of the comics right now. They tend to order about a month early so that they can get as many in for the people who want them as possible. So it's important, if you want a copy, that you tell your local comic book shop to check out Jupiter Jet.
That's right. If you want to support the book, if you want to support me and Ashley, you should run to your local comic book store and order this right now. Ashley, what is this series about, in case they're asking?
I'm so glad they have asked. It's about 16-year-old Jacqueline Jackie Johnson, and she rides the sky on an experimental jetpack and does what any other teenage girl would do, steal from the rich and give to the poor. But when she steals a mysterious object from the wrong person, can she survive the robots and the ray guns that they send after her?
Yes, and you're going to get 32 pages in that comic book for $3.99. Not only is there an amazing main story, but there's also a backup by Jorge Corona and us. Jorge Corona, if you don't know that name, he drew The Flash. Now, all you need to do is go in your local comic book shop and tell your retailer about Jupiter Jet #1. You can add it to your pull list if you so desire. But we have 3 covers. We have a regular cover by Ben Matsuya, our regular series artist, a variant B cover by Ben Matsuya, and then a variant C cover by John Boy Myers, who you might have seen his art on Teen Titans. He does some Superman covers, and he also drew The Royals. And also, if you have the previews, the October Previews magazine, it's on page 254.
Nice.
Now, don't just take our word for it for how awesome Jupiter Jet is. We're a little biased. Actually, some other comic book creators have chimed in on Jupiter Jet as well.
Yeah, some people you may have heard of, like Tom King, the writer of Batman and Mr. Miracle. He says, pure awesome comics. From page 1, I felt like I was with Jupiter Jet, soaring and smiling, eager for next adventures.
High praise.
Yes, and then Brendan Fletcher, who writes Motor Crush and Batgirl, says that Jupiter Jet cements its place in the firmament with high-flying, all-ages fun.
So Ashley and I are very proud of Jupiter Jet, and we're so excited for you to read the first issue, but we need your help. So if you want to make sure that there's a Jupiter Jet Volume 2, please run out to the retailers, to the local comic book shops. It'll also be available on Comixology, and put Jupiter Jet in your pull list. Ask your retailer for issue #1. Ashley will appreciate it. I'll appreciate it. And we guarantee you it's going to be a rip-roaring comic book. Now to the show.
He's the lean purple detecting machine of the DC universe.
Parasite?
No, it's actually Ralph Dibny, because your Geek History Lesson on the Elongated Man is now in session. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And I'm Jason the Fantastical Inman. Welcome to your Mine University. And yes, I know that my middle name doesn't match the character we're talking about, but honestly, I never thought we would ever talk about this character on the podcast. Ralph Dibny, the Elongated Man. He is our subject. He is a DC Comics mystery detective who can also stretch. His nose wiggles. And he's very soon to show up on The Flash.
Yes, if I can be
Season 3.
If I can be very
Season 4.
If I can be very candid for a moment, I honestly thought we would do Plastic Man before we did Elongated Man.
And you know what?
But we live in the weird alternate universe where Guardians of the Galaxy is a hit, so here we are.
We are. We live in the weird alternate universe where Wonder Woman movies, Thor fights Hela on screen, and Guardians of the Galaxy is a massive, massive hit. We are truly in the bizarre universe. You know, I would love to teach a Plastic Man lesson because I love that character.
I know you would also love to teach a Bizarro lesson.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's a fair point. But one wonders if the entire Bizarro episode has to be like, next Bizarro, go this way.
Oh, absolutely it does. For an hour.
Or do the episode just start and it goes, me hate this episode, and it just ends?
Yes, no, that is it. That is it. Completely done.
All right, so let's. Did any of Mine University students request Elongated Man?
Yes, we have a single TA, and it's from quite a while ago, from Mr. Tim Lamb. So thank you for requesting Elongated Man.
No. Major props to Tim Lamb because he was so far ahead of the curve that he somehow predicted that Elongated Man was going to appear on The Flash.
Yeah.
Well, slow clap, Tim Lamb.
We do have some requests that go all the way back to the heady early days of Geek History Lesson, and this is definitely one of them.
Nice.
All right, so let's roll right into the 10 cent origin, shall we?
The 10 cent origin is the first section of our podcast where we tell you basically the Cliff Notes version of the character, what you need to know in case you go to a flashy cocktail party.
And
somebody's like, hey, person who listens to the podcast, who is this Ralph Dibny guy?
So, Randolph William Ralph Dibny, because he's a DC Comics character, so he has a middle name, is a DC Comics superhero character. He was created by John Broome and Carmine Infantino, who you have heard here before for basically every Flash character that we've ever talked about. Very iconic creators over at DC Comics. And first appeared in The Flash Volume 1, number 112 in May of 1960. His significant other and partner is Sue Dibny. And team affiliations include the Justice League, the Doom Patrol, and Black Lantern Corps. So you know at least one event we're going to be talking about.
Oh, hey-oh.
His abilities include superior deductive reasoning, finite abilities to stretch and shape his body, enhanced agility and olfactory sense, enhanced durability, and being a talented chemist, which I didn't know was a superpower until this lesson.
Well, you also said detective skills, too, so...
I know, but we have those for a lot of Bat characters. It's always like superior deductive reasoning because everyone in the Bat family is a genius, Damien.
If you tell them 2 + 2, they can figure out 4.
Exactly. And he is currently being portrayed by Hartley Sawyer on the CW's Flash television show.
Wow, even the real actor's name sounds comic booky.
His real life name sounds like he should be the Pied Piper.
Yeah, sure.
Which, did we ever do a lesson on Pied Piper?
No.
You can request one. There you go.
Please don't.
It'd be great. Jason will teach it. It'll be a blast.
So obscure.
It'll be a blast. Let's move right into the meet cute, shall we?
The meet cute is the next section of our podcast where we stole a term from romantic comedies, basically saying how we meted or cuted the character for the first time. Ashley, I am so curious. What is your meet cute for Elongated Man?
I guess I might have seen the Justice League cartoon where he appears in it. Actually appears in a number of them, including one that won an Emmy. Fun fact.
He appears in the Booster Gold one.
He does, which is
great.
one of the better ones.
Do you know who he's voiced by? Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Jeremy Piven.
Oh, well, I guess someone will think that's cool. I don't.
Wow, folks. This lesson, I feel like we are in a Subaru heading towards a cliff right now. And my God.
Sorry to all of our Entourage fans who are listening.
We've done some obscure characters before, and it's weird that Elongated Man is the one that's hanging us up.
Yeah. But honestly, I used to get him confused with Plastic Man all the time.
How dare you?
I assumed they were the same character that had a name and a costume shift at some point. They are
not. Eel O'Brien is so much better.
You're right. You're not wrong. I really was only aware of him or why he maybe might matter after the Identity Crisis event, which really goes out of its way to create a modern identity for the character.
Do you think it's Identity Crisis that maybe that's where it was?
I mean, literally, it must have been the Justice League cartoon because that was before Identity Crisis, and I have seen that Booster Gold episode, but I have no memory of being like, oh, that's Elongated Man. Isn't he cool? Smiley face. The first time really I ever paid attention to him was Identity Crisis. So probably, around 2006 or whenever I read that. So how about you? Where did you first meet Elongated Man?
In the early 90s, as I was mentioned several times ago, in the golden age of comics, yes, I called it that, comic books used to be sold in Walmart. And Walmart would have these packs of comics. I've mentioned this several times, and it's something that I've started noticing in Targets now, and I'm very excited about.
And in Walmarts, have we not?
I don't know. Doesn't matter to this Me Cute. And so in one of those packages, there used to be, I don't know if you know this, Ashley, but DC used to publish so many multiple Justice League titles, just like Marvel publishes Avengers title. Now it kind of seems like there's Avengers Rhode Island, Avengers Saturn, Avengers guys that all wear purple.
I would read Avengers Saturn, I'm not going to lie.
Sure. And back in the day, there used to be Justice League Task Force, Justice League Europe, Justice League International. And I don't remember whether it was Justice League Europe or Justice League International, but one of those, I had a single issue of that in one of these packs that I got for $10. 10 comics for $10 was a great deal. And he was in one of these comic books. And I remember seeing him. And this was before I even knew who Plastic Man was, because I didn't find out who Plastic Man was until way later. And he wore a purple costume. He had a wife who didn't have superpowers.
But was always around.
But was there. And he just kind of seemed annoying. And I can remember the first issue that I read with him, the nose was huge. Like, whoever drew this issue, like, drew Ralph's nose huge. Like, he had amazing snoz.
He does, because I looked at a lot of art of him recently, he does fluctuate between normal human being and Jughead Jones.
Yes. But to be honest with you, he didn't make much of an impression on me. So from there, I kind of knew who he was because he would randomly just show up in places. So when he showed up in Identity Crisis as, like, a lead character, I knew exactly who he was. But I didn't really care until after the story. To be honest with you, the story that kind of gave me a lot of appreciation for Ralph Dibny is 52.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about that.
Well, I think 52 might be one of Ralph's best stories because Ralph actually becomes cool in that story.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the other characters.
I think that's a fair assertion.
All right, cool. So let's move on into the History 101, where Ashley is going to take the wheel and attempt to swerve us into making us care about Ralph Dibny.
I'm going to try to swerve us away from Ralph Dibny.
By the way, if you love Ralph Dibny, I'm sorry. It's just that it was funny. Ashley was telling me a lot of stories before we recorded this podcast about how hard it was to track down some of this information.
Yes, correct.
It was kind of a stretch, as one might say. All right, Ashley, let's begin.
Jokes. So let's start with a little bit of publication history, because if you're like me and you wonder, but didn't Plastic Man already exist?
Yeah, Ashley, didn't Plastic Man already exist?
We surely have a story about that. So Flash editor in 1960 was a man named Julius Schwartz, sometimes referred to as Julie. We've talked to him about him a lot on this podcast. He wanted Broom and Infantino to introduce a new supporting character in their Flash run because there weren't enough of them. Fun fact, he did not know at the time that DC owned the name and the character Plastic Man, which they had acquired 4 years earlier in 1954 after absorbing Quality Comics and their associated properties.
Yep.
So in this version of Ralph Dibny, who is basically just Plastic Man with a different name, he marries Sue Dearborn and becomes a successful actor because he's all stretchy and can make funny faces. Then Elongated Man's first solo appearance and first retcon is in the backup of Detective Comics, where Ralph Dibny becomes a detective for the first time, as one might assume.
Out of nowhere.
Yes.
Okay.
And he loves American conspiracy theories. So in this version...
He's all about the Kennedy assassination?
No, more like Wendigos and like stuff that lives in the woods.
He's like X-Files. All right, cool.
Yeah. Sometimes a murder.
The Chupacabra.
In this version, him and his wife, Sue, travel the U.S. in a convertible, hunting down these mysteries and helping folks along the way. So it's like a road book.
Okay.
And in these early adventures, he teams up with the likes of Batman, Green Lantern, the Atom, and Zatanna. So nothing is really too far out of the realm for Ralph Dibny.
Got it.
All right, so let's dive more in depth into the fictional character biography. I just think it's really funny that they created this character that they already essentially had. Mm-hmm. So when Ralph Dibny was a teenager in the way back, he was fascinated by contortionists, like a normal teenage boy, and tried to learn everything he could about them and from them. From his research, he learned that all successful bodybenders drink a soda called Gin Gold. So what does he do, Jason? I'm so glad you asked.
What does he do, Ashley?
He decided to make his own version of this soda because he was such a talented chemist, and like every DC character, inexplicably has access to a lab. Mm-hmm. So Ralph extracted super concentrated extract from the Jingo fruit, not a real fruit.
No.
I looked for it. Very similarly spelled ginkgo fruit is real. that he found in the Yucatan. I don't know what he was doing there, but he got it.
Traveling.
And traveling and trying to find this fruit, I guess. And this rendered his body highly elastic, and Ralph got to be a contortionist. Yay! When he first arrived in the Flash, he was initially a suspect of several robberies, which seemed to involve opening a window really, really high up, like a skylight, reaching down and stealing cool things like rubies and diamonds like one does in the Silver Age. And he is blamed immediately due to his metahuman abilities, but he sticks around and decides to help Barry Allen capture the bad guys, and it is revealed that they had actually used a helicopter and a bunch of ropes in order to frame Ralph.
No!
You know, because
That's a lot of work just to frame Ralph.
just to frame this one specific guy.
Hey, Sal,
With this one
if we
ability.
hover the helicopter for 5 minutes and then you climb down that rope, we can frame this elongated man guy. Well, I don't know, Jimmy. I can't really rappel. Just do it.
You've seen Mission Impossible, right? It'll be fine. Fun fact, Ralph Dibny was one of the earliest DC superheroes to be public with his secret identity. So he
never really had a secret identity,
he
really.
didn't. And it does, in his original version, he did become a successful actor and a celebrity. And there's always been a bit of that in Ralph. He really gets off on adulation and recognition. And because he's elongated man, I guess that means that nothing bad is going to happen to him, right? Right? Or the people he loves?
No,
right?
no, nothing will happen.
He's also one of the earliest DC superheroes to marry a longtime love interest. And they stayed together the entire time from their marriage until their respective deaths. Their marriages never dissolved. They never divorce. It never ends, as it does for pretty much everyone else who looks at someone else and then gets married to them. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit until 1973. Do you know, Jason, what might have been a milestone event in a superhero like Elongated Man's life in 1973?
That's very generic. No.
He becomes a full-fledged member of the Justice League.
Okay. All right. Cool.
It's pretty much like the ascension into adulthood of the DC
I didn't know if
universe.
you were trying to get me to be like his 25th wedding anniversary, his bar mitzvah. I don't know.
I'm not Jewish, but your bar mitzvah happens way earlier.
I mean, this is the superhero universe. Anything can happen.
That's true. And not long after that, his wife Sue, who is not a superhero and does not do superhero things, is also made a full-fledged member of the Justice League.
Yeah, that's
She's
always
just,
bothered me.
Like, always around. Sue, I have a lot of problems with Sue as a character. And I know a lot of people are going to think that that's sacrilege, but there is a Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane cover where Lois Lane is making cookies or muffins or something, and she drops one on Superman's foot and crushes it. Like, that to me is who Sue Dibny is. Like, she shows up and like bakes cookies and hugs Ralph and gets to be a member of it's the best way to be a member of the Justice League.
I mean,
but there's no reason for her to be there ever.
Yeah, there is a weird thing of, Sue does have this impression of just being the girl in the kitchen who cooks for the Justice League.
Yeah, she never ascends that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it is weird, especially because the Justice League doesn't have a butler like the Avengers. They don't have a Jarvis.
No.
Which it's kind of weird because in my head, you're kind of like, well, I wonder how come Alfred never became like...
Because Alfred has children to look after.
That's a fair point, but it is a weird thing, since Batman like basically funds the Justice League. So Sue just kind of like hangs around for the free rent, it kind of seems like.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have any problem with Sue Dibny. It's just the problem that they never did. She never has a really like great storyline until Identity Crisis, which we'll get to.
Which is maybe not great as far as she's concerned.
It's not a great storyline for her, not really.
The Dibnys, though, are notable for having a stable, happy, and almost trouble-free marriage compared to many of their other more famous fellow superheroes. I'm looking at you here, Bruce Wayne. And so remember that Detective Comics backup that we talked about?
Sure.
So in it, Ralph solved mysteries, and they were supposed to be paced so that the reader could solve them before Ralph did, the way the clues are laid out on the page. I think that's really, really cool. Unlike other popular detective superheroes, he was famous for not employing superpowers or gadgets, just good old-fashioned deductive abilities and nose wiggles. He has a very famous line where he'll wiggle his nose and say, "I smell a mystery."
Yeah, that is like his catchphrase.
And it was because of that, which was popularized during this series, that people think he has a heightened sense of smell. I did mention that in our
Yeah.
10 Cent Origin. I don't know if I necessarily
I don't believe that.
buy that. Like, he's no Wolverine.
Although, I will tell you this. If he has, again, the extent of stretching abilities that I think he does, he could expand and decrease his olfactory openings that would...
Oh, Mr. Inman, I'm impressed. You're convincing me.
Well, it would give him a better sense of smell.
Yeah, that's...
So if he has that much control with his abilities, and we've never been shown that he does...
Arguable whether or not he does, but for the sake of this argument, maybe he does.
Let's just say yes.
Interesting. Well played, sir. Well played.
I only know that because Reed Richards did it once.
Oh, well, that's...
Because Reed Richards is smart, baby.
I'm gonna come out and say this right here. I think of all your potential stretchy superheroes, I do think Reed Richards is maybe the best version of it.
Do you want to know why Reed Richards is the best? And it's not because I love the Fantastic Four more than anything else.
Because he transcends being a stretchy superhero?
Yes. It's because
being a stretchy superhero is kind of dumb, guys. I'm sorry.
It's because... he's a genius. And Reed Richards' superpower is actually being genius, because most of the time him being stretchy doesn't really help the team. It's him being smart. The one who does it is because the reason why Plastic Man is able to transcend being the better stretchy character, or why I think he's more popular, is because Plastic Man is kind of an elastomorph. He can do anything.
He's also played for comedy.
That's another reason too.
And I don't know if being a stretchy superhero transcends the Silver Age type of storytelling.
I think it does, but we can talk about this more.
That's fine.
But
we can totally.
I'm certain.
We can table that.
Oh, I bet you we're having a Plastic Man versus Elongated Man debate in the discussion. It's going to happen.
Almost certainly are.
Even if it just happens naturally. It's happening naturally in the episode. I'm sorry, Ashley. Let's go back to Elongated Man.
So even during the Silver Age, when he was making some of his first appearances and having his first solo series and all that, Ralph Dibny was considered a throwback to a Golden Age style of comic book storytelling, which is why there's almost no interpersonal drama there. Everything's kind of okay. From the end of the Silver Age into the modern age of comics, Elongated Man has very little to do, save for a sprinkling of background appearances in things like Justice League, random annuals,
just sort of cameo appearances,
and odd backup series. Yeah,
okay.
And it's unfortunately not until Identity Crisis, which we've talked about a lot by Brad Meltzer and Rags Morales in 2004, that he does anything of significance. So we're gonna jump right to that.
And again, and as a person, I will say, as a person who read comic books in the late 80s, early 90s, that's pretty true. Like, again, he just kind of shows up in Justice League International. He kind of just shows up in Justice League Europe. But, like, I don't remember him doing anything significant. And I'm sure some of the listeners are yelling at us like, what about this thing? And sure, but name me 10 people in a comic book store that could tell you about that event.
Right, and we are trying to go for milestone events that define the character, and showing up to fight a bad guy is not always constitute character growth.
Exactly. And as we found out in a lot of our lessons in the Silver Age, usually it's just fight the bad guy goes to jail, bad guy breaks out of jail, and then repeat.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the Justice League.
All right, so yes, let's go to his probably most important storyline, but not my favorite, Identity Crisis.
So, in Identity Crisis, Ralph Dibny is the character in the middle of the events, despite the fact that Batman can probably safely be considered the protagonist. The series revolves around the violent rape and murder of his wife, Sue Dibny, and Ralph's subsequent grieving process. This story was the first time that anyone outside or inside of the comics really looks at Sue with any respect. The characters treat her well. Nobody's rude to her, but she's really treated with reverence here. And she's really put up on a pedestal. And this is one of the reasons why I sometimes take issue with this character, because I feel like this pedestal is unearned.
It is a retcon.
It definitely is a retcon.
But let's talk about first, are you going to go through all the events of Identity Crisis?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Because you kind of combined two events for Sue there.
Well,
it's all good. All right.
So in a desperate bid to keep Ralph from literally falling into pieces, the Justice League hunts the DCU's greatest villains to discover the identity of Sue's murderer. After Sue's death, the same villain threatens to release the identities of the rest of the Justice League's most beloved friends and family. This directly results in the death of Tim Drake's father.
Mm-hmm.
Jason,
Jack Drake?
I was just going to ask, do you know the name of Tim Drake's
Jack.
dad?
Uh-huh.
Good call. It is is Jack Drake, yes. That's the other, probably most significant death during the course of the series. One of the many reasons that Sue's death is considered to be such a horrific tragedy was not only because of the healthy and happy nature of Ralph and Sue's relationship, but also because it was revealed that Sue was pregnant at the time of her murder. So do you want to add anything to Identity Crisis?
Well, basically, the thing of why that story, I think, hit so hard is because it revealed that when the Justice League first started to hunt down the murderer, they were like, okay, who could have murdered Sue? Their first thought went to Dr. Light, and you found out that there was an incident, like, in our time, somewhere during the 70s, during the satellite era of the Justice League, that Sue was raped by Dr. Light.
Yes.
And they mind-wiped him, and they mind-wiped Batman because Batman was so, like, he's like, you can't do that to people.
Yeah.
And then it made this reveal. It kind of gave this secret history to the DC universe that, like, oh, you remember all those Silver Age tales you read? Well, there's actually like this underlining story that you never knew about, which was interesting for about a couple years, but then it got a little old. And I don't know. I go back and forth with this storyline, back and forth. Like, I understand as a writer why you do this, because it does make a character like Sue Dibny way more important than what she ever was. Like I said, she gives her a layer of humanity and a layer of subtext that she didn't have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know if I need an event this tragic in my superhero comic books.
And that's the issue that a lot of people do take with Identity Crisis. It was very well received at the time.
It's well written. It's so well written.
It is one of the best written event crossover comics because Brad Meltzer is just a great writer.
He's a good writer.
The art is absolutely beautiful.
Rag Morales.
But when people make arguments about why it's not good, they cite the treatment of Sue here. And I agree with them from the standpoint of, like, why do you have to treat female characters like this? But I disagree from it that, like, I'm going to be really blunt here and people are going to think it's really mean. Nobody cared about Sue Dibny before this event happened. And people want to pretend like they did. And that's where I take issue with her character, is that people make her a soapbox to stand on.
Sure.
There's my rant about Identity Crisis.
It's all good. Ashley hates Sue Dibny. All right.
I don't hate Sue Dibny.
Moving on. Nope.
I just think
you
she
heard it
gets
here.
accolades that she
hates Sue Dibny. Sue Dibny should have died, says Ashley Robinson.
I do not.
You can quote Ashley Robinson.
I do not believe that. Please
I hope
don't.
the next Identity Crisis.
Fake podcast news.
I hope the next Identity Crisis hardcover would be like, Sue Dibny always deserved to die. Hashtag Ashley Robinson, Geek History Lesson.
DC can print that if they really want to, I guess. The next time Ralph Dibny crops up is like 2 minutes later in 52. Jason, really quick, what is 52?
That was actually like 3 years later, but sure.
But it's the next staple event.
I know. 52 is the weekly mini-series that actually had 52 issues that told the story of the missing year between Infinite Crisis, and 1 year later, because the entire DC universe jumped ahead a year. It is, in my opinion, one of the best comic book miniseries or ongoing series that DC has ever published.
There you go. So during Identity Crisis, Ralph's shattered emotional state makes it increasingly difficult for him to retain his desired physical state for any length of time, and he struggles with grief, and that's compounded throughout his appearances in this weekly series. He literally cannot hold himself together. I actually think this is maybe the most interesting thing that ever happens to Ralph, the idea that his inner emotional state is reflected in his outward physical elasticity. Ralph is seen contemplating suicide when he first appears in 52 after he discovers that Sue's gravesite has been vandalized. Now, Jason, do you know what it was vandalized with?
The upside down Superman symbol.
Yes, which is also known as the Kryptonian symbol for resurrection.
Oh, I know it, baby.
There you go. That's someone I thought I might trip you up on.
Nope, I know that.
So Ralph confronts Cassie Sandsmark, who was Wonder Girl at the time, for more information, and she tells him that she belongs to a cult that is attempting to resurrect Superboy. And cult members try to drown Ralph not that long after, and Cassie steals his wedding ring, which is not a nice thing to do. Don't do that to people. The next time he pops up is in week 11 when he learns that his storage unit in Opal City has been broken into and some of Sue's clothing has been stolen. Then the next week in week 12, he catches up with Cassie Sandsmark again, and she tells him that the cult stole the clothes and is going to use them combined with the wedding ring to resurrect Sue, and that Ralph is welcome to come and attend the ceremony if he wants and, see how it's going to work out. The ceremony happens the following week in week 13. And of course, Ralph goes because what else are you going to do?
He does.
But he brings along some people with him.
Yes, he does.
Do you know who he brings?
He brings... He brings,
It's okay if you don't.
No, he brings 3 other people. I know
He brings 4 other people.
One of them is Zoriel, the angel from JLA. I want to say Hal Jordan's one of them.
Yes.
I want to say Green Arrow's one of them.
Yes.
And then I don't know who the 4th one is.
It's Metamorpho.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So that is Metamorpho, Green Arrow, Zoriel, and Hal Jordan.
He's going back to his Justice League Europe days.
Yeah, there you go. When they interrupt the ceremony, an effigy of Sue crawls toward Ralph, calling out for him to save her. We're going to get right back to Ralph Dibny in just a minute, but now this.
Hey, super friends, are you in need for great talent for your business or league, but you're short on time? And you don't have time to get lost in a huge stack of resumes or possibly do tryouts of any type of feats of strengths because you need to find your perfect hire? You just need some right tools, some smarter tools? Well, then you should check out ZipRecruiter, because with ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. So you can rest easy knowing your job is being seen by the right candidates. You don't have to throw up a bat signal in the middle of Gotham and hope that the right person comes to your job. Now, ZipRecruiter, they put their smart matching technology to work, actively notifying qualified candidates about your job within minutes of posting so you can receive the best possible matches. That's why ZipRecruiter is so different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day, because ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. Now, you want to find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by growing businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates. Our listeners right now can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/geekhistory. That's ZipRecruiter.com/geekhistory. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/geekhistory, because ZipRecruiter is about the best way to fill out your league. You don't want to get maybe an elongated, stretchy guy that's not a good fit for your team or your business. ZipRecruiter.com/geekhistory.
Now back to more Elongated Man in 52. So following this deeply traumatic event, Ralph suffers a nervous breakdown and does not surface again until week 18. So he takes about 5 weeks off when he is approached by the Croatoan Society that is made up of Detective Chimp, Terry 13, and Edogawa Sangaku.
I think it's Tracy 13 is who you're saying there.
Nailed that. Okay. They ask him to help investigate the murder of Tim Trench, whose body was discovered with the helmet of Dr. Fate, which is a very, very ominous happenstance. A voice from inside the helmet speaks directly to Ralph and promises to fulfill his desires if he makes the sacrifice it requires. And with the helmet, he journeys through a bunch of different afterlives from various different cultures. It's actually really, really cool. Mm-hmm. Go look at the art for that, even if you're not going to read the rest of the series. It's amazing.
And he goes through a bunch of different dimensions that you've seen in the DC universe before.
Nice. Ralph then takes a little break until week 27 when the Spectre promises Ralph that he will resurrect Sue if Ralph kills Jean Loring, but Ralph is unwilling to do so, and so Sue doesn't get resurrected.
Now let's bring it up, because we did not talk about this in Identity Crisis, the importance of Jean Loring. So Jean Loring is the wife of Ray Palmer. Jean Loring is actually who killed Sue Dibny.
It is revealed, yes.
But now she's possessed by the Stone of Eclipso, which turns you crazy and gives you a half black face, half white face, and makes you cuckoo. But now she's Eclipso, but that's why that's so important.
Yes. In week 32, he goes to Nanda Parbat, which you may recognize from being the place that the Al Ghul's live, and he fights
Not in the comic books, though, but yeah.
No, but if, in any of the movie or TV adaptation. And he fights the Yeti, because why the heck not? And it is there that Ramakrishna tells Ralph the end is already written, which is actually really funny, I think, on a metatextual level, because all the scripts would have been submitted by that point.
Do you know who Ramakrishna is?
Not really.
Ramakrishna is the spiritual entity who sort of like kind of watches over Nanda Parbat. That is the entity that brought Boston Brand back to life.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's very interesting. He next appears nearly 10 weeks later in week 42 inside Dr. Fate's tower, where he is trying to complete a spell to bring Sue back to life. ... Or so it appears. When he next puts on the helmet, it is revealed that Felix Faust has been posing as the spirit of Naboo all along and was going to trade Ralph's soul to Neron, who's basically the devil.
Yeah, he's the devil of the DC universe.
In exchange for his own freedom, and that he never intended to help Ralph revive Sue. Then Ralph reveals that he knew that it was Faust all along, and when Neron appears to collect his soul, he kills Ralph, and both villains are trapped by a binding spell that he has performed and tied back to hell. His spirit is later reunited with Sue, so it kind of works out in the end, even though
so there's a couple big things in there that you kind of stretched on by. We have to bring up here. There's two big reveals in that scene. The first reveal is that for the entirety of 52, it has been thought that Ralph is a drunk. And he keeps drinking out of a flask, and they show it in every appearance. Now, it is revealed in that issue that he has actually been drinking Gin Gold the entire time.
Yeah, his stretchy soda.
Yeah, and so he has his powers, but everybody's thought that he didn't have his powers. The other thing is that, and of course, I'm remembering this off the top of my head, so I might be paraphrasing it very badly, but Ralph made some sort of binding spell that meant that you can't leave the Tower of Fate unless you left with Ralph.
Yes.
Like he did some binding. So when Faust is there and Neron is there, when they kill Ralph, they're trapped in the Tower of Fate for all eternity now because they don't have Ralph to leave. So he screws both of them over, but it also at the same time, Ralph was ready to move on, so it's a little bit of a suicide, so it's weird. But I always like the idea, and this is one of the most, you might talk about this a little bit, I don't know, the greatest unused plot of all time is at the very end of 52, we see Sue Dibny and Ralph Dibny as ghosts, and he smells a mystery. And I always heard that Mark Waid wanted to write a series called Ghost Detectives.
Oh, I didn't find anything about that.
And it was going to be the both of them possessing bodies and solving the mysteries of the DC universe. But unfortunately, after 52 is when Mark Waid left DC and went and worked for Marvel and stuff like that. But I always heard that he had that pitch, and that was the idea of that last scene.
Of seeing them as ghosts?
Yeah, it was to do a miniseries called Ghost Detectives.
Oh, interesting. That's funny, too, because the next time he appears is with Sue in a Super Buddies miniseries spinoff called formerly known as the Justice League.
Oh, yeah. A flashback.
Yeah, this series was written before Identity Crisis, but it was published after Identity Crisis, so it was marketed under the guise of being a flashback. It appeared in JLA Classifieds number 4 through 9, and the husband and wife appear as regular team members. This is the arc that introduced the running joke of, I can't believe it's not the Justice League, which crops up in a whole bunch of different...
And then becomes a miniseries that's actually called that.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But this was like a popular joke around the mid-aughts, and this is considered to also hold the first hint at Sue's pregnancy that was revealed in Identity Crisis.
Oh, okay.
That it was established in this miniseries.
Interesting, okay.
We do get to see Ralph and Sue together in the afterlife. Unfortunately, it's in a story called Rain in Hell. Oh, that's how Jason feels about it. The couple appears in spectral forms to Dr. Occult to warn him of a war brewing in hell, even though there's no reason given as to why they are in hell or
why are they
know
in
what
hell?
Is happening in. I mean, I guess if you consider Ralph's death a suicide, and I guess if you think people who commit suicide go to hell.
I mean, it's not a suicide, but he wanted. I don't know.
I know it's
not technically a suicide.
It's not, but it's a very. I have questions about the storyline.
It's a slippery slope.
They don't show up again. After this, they basically just leave Dr. Occult alone in the story to save the day. Like, good luck, man. We warned you. We're out. And he does wind up saving the day, the world, and the reality of the DCU as we understand it, because you have to. Then Blackest Night happens. Jason, what is Blackest Night?
Blackest Night was where Green Lanterns find out that there's rings of every color, including black rings that resurrect anybody that's dead.
Yes, and in issue 0, both Ralph and Sue's graves can be seen during the Black Hands chant, where he's trying to raise the dead. And at the end of the issue, Ralph's elongated arm can be seen reaching from the grave, heralding the fact that he's probably going to show up again.
Sure.
Both Dibnys appear as reanimated Black Lantern corpses, and they attack Hawkman and Hawkgirl, with Ralph defeating Hawkman by hitting him in the head with a mace and ripping his heart out of his chest. Uncharacteristically violent for Elongated Man, I would say.
Well, but characteristically perfect for a Black Lantern.
Yes, yeah. They join up with the Black Lantern versions of Martian Manhunter, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, and Firestorm when they go to Gotham City in order to kill the Flash and Green Lantern, until Ralph and Sue are reduced to ash by the Indigo Tribe, who swoop in with their rings to save the day. And then during the final battle of Blackest Night, the Dibneys are conspicuously absent from resurrection by the White Entity. The White Entity is supposed to be the pure personification of life, and DC uses this to bring back a bunch of beloved characters that they'd earlier murderized. And Green Lantern announces that they will not be coming back, that they have chosen not to. They're going to stay together where they can no longer be murdered. An unpowered Ralph Dibny is seen really briefly in the Flashpoint series. And he is hired by Martian Manhunter to investigate Vandal Savage's company. I thought this was really interesting because I've read Flashpoint a couple of times and I completely forgot that this happened.
I forgot about him too.
It's literally like 2 pages long.
All right.
I think the idea of a depowered Ralph Dibny as like a private dick is a really interesting idea. And I kind of wish that it would have been or maybe could be explored more.
Yeah.
I think he's more interesting as a detective than as a stretchy guy.
I agree.
Next, the New 52 happens. Jason, what is the good old New 52?
The New 52 is after Flashpoint when the DC rebooted their entire universe. They published 52 titles and they said, hey, our universe has only been around for 5 years, so everybody's young again.
Yeah, so the Elongated Man is in this continuity.
Now, this is news to me. I had no idea he was in the New 52.
Well, he's in about 7 whole issues of it.
Okay.
We first meet him as Ralph Dibny. He does get a bit of a retcon as he is a rogue member of the Secret Six, meaning that he's part of the Secret Six, but he doesn't always do what he's told and he doesn't always show up for stuff.
Yep.
The Secret Six is one of Damon Wells's secret strike teams in the DC universe. He reports directly to the Riddler, who's acting as essentially their oracle at the time, who's ironically called Mockingbird.
No, that's what the weird informational team leader floating head is always called Mockingbird.
Yeah.
It's a code name.
I just think that's funny because this was right before Marvel rebooted Mockingbird the character.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like Bobby gets resurrected and then reintroduced like 4 or 5 years after this. So it's interesting to me that yes, Mockingbird is a standing code name in the DC universe. But
I think you got that reversed. Because if this is the New 52, then Mockingbird's resurrected like 5 years before this.
She was, but she didn't become popular or used in their storylines until Marvel Now.
Sure,
in the Hawkeye series.
She didn't get a title.
But yes, you're right. She was technically alive, but then she became popular.
Sorry,
and then
Professor. I'm just helping you out.
If anyone wants a Mockingbird lesson, you can go ahead and
I'd like a Mockingbird lesson. I think that would be fun.
I could teach that.
Well, you know what that would involve?
No.
The Mockingbird lesson would include a lot of references to West Coast Avengers, downtown.
Man, we haven't had one of those in a long
in a DC episode. We got a West Coast Avengers. We haven't crossed paths with West Coast Avengers in a long time.
So there you go. There's my gift to all the podcast listeners to make up for my Jeremy Piven dig earlier. So back to Ralph Dibny, though.
Sure.
He does wind up leaving Secret Six. He leaves the entire team to become simply the costume hero Elongated Man that we were all hoping he would be.
And they don't explain how he gets his powers?
In Secret Six number 12, he has them.
He just always has them. Got it.
He has them, but he's just not Elongated Man. He's just only Ralph Dibny.
I mean, sure, undercover.
There is no retcon origin of him here.
It's not like we need it.
Right. The biggest retcon is that he is a member of the Secret Six, which he hadn't been previously.
All right.
In Secret Six number 12, he's reunited with his wife, Sue, who's apparently also unmurdered. And she's the reason why he decides to just become the Elongated Man, just become a hero and fight crimes and not be a pseudo bad guy.
All right.
So they wind up together again, which is kind of nice.
Sounds like I didn't miss anything.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going to end the history lesson, although I do want to mention a couple other important Elseworld storylines that he appears in and some other media appearances.
Sure.
I really do want to mention that he appears in Kingdom Come as a supporting member of Batman's faction, although he doesn't play a huge part in the drama of the narrative. If you're going to do any Elongated Man research, just find this art. It's probably the best Elongated Man
Alex
has
Ross,
ever looked.
Does some really good looking Ralphs.
Yeah. And if they were ever going to bring back a standalone Elongated Man series, I know he's really expensive and can't keep the deadlines and probably wouldn't do it. But like Alex Ross would be the most amazing artist to get on an Elongated Man series.
It would probably be the only way an Elongated Man series would sell.
If you put I don't know, man.
Written and drawn by Alex Ross.
Ragman's got a solo series. Anything's possible.
Well, yeah.
In the Dark Knight Strikes Again, everyone's favorite Dark Knight series.
Oh, man.
Ralph Dibny is mentioned as a man in a bar who's reminiscing about the Silver Age and the good old days, and he's heard to mention Batman. And when he hears that, his face sags and his jaw drops all the way to the floor. That's pretty much the confirmation that this is Ralph and not literally anyone else. Later, he is also seen hawking a male enhancement drink called Gin Gold in a TV infomercial, so he's in the background. He's then recruited to help Batman in his attack against the American government, which had been taken over by Lex Luthor at this time. That's kind of Lex's MO, being president. He retains his rivalry with Plastic Man during this round, which I think is funny.
I remember that scene.
I didn't know that he had a rivalry with Plastic Man, and this scene alone is just really funny because they should be at odds. Of course, there should be a scoreboard.
It's
and everything.
Probably the only good scene in The Dark Knight Strikes Again.
Yes, he's also maintains a friendship with Barry Allen and Oliver Queen, who were some of his Silver and Modern Age friends. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I think you make a good case. Probably the best thing that ever happened.
Yep, in that series.
He also has a brief cameo in the 3rd issue of JLA Avengers.
Oh, yeah?
Where he replaces Plastic Man after the merging of the DC and Marvel universes because Plastic Man doesn't want to be involved in these shenanigans anymore, so they call up Elongated Man, confirming to me that he is the low-rent Plastic Man.
Yep.
And then in other media, he is going to be on The Flash, played by Hartley. What was his last name?
I don't know. It's in your
Sawyer.
notes.
Sorry, I only wrote his first name. Played by Hartley Sawyer, who I will say has a great look for the character.
He looks like he looks like the Rags Morales drawing of Ralph Dibny came to life.
Yes, and I do want to say a fun fact about The Flash. He was first mentioned in a season 1 episode called Power Outage.
Really?
As one of the people who died as a result of the particle accelerator accident that gives the Flash his powers. So they think that he might crop up later as a potential villain for them.
Okay, so they did a thing. This is something that Arrow did as well.
Yeah.
Arrow's first season liked to drop names left and right.
I'm betting it's going to be retcon, guys.
I bet you they ignore it completely.
Yeah.
Because it's just a name and a thing. Arrow did that as well, and then they introduced several characters that they had already mentioned or said was dead or said was so it's fine.
But I just thought that was really a really neat little Easter egg, and so I definitely wanted to bring that up.
Cool.
He does appear in the Justice League Unlimited cartoon. He debuts in the episode The Greatest Story Never Told alongside Booster Gold and Skeets.
Voiced by Jeremy Piven, who we already know Ashley's thoughts on.
Jason's favorite actor, Jeremy Piven.
Not really. My favorite actor is Michael Emerson.
Is he? Is that here?
He's towards the top.
That's funny. And he is referred to by Booster Gold as the squeaky wheel, which I think is a great description of the character. He does go on to appear in several more episodes, including one that won an Emmy that I didn't write down the title of. But so there you go, Elongated Man, a Emmy Award winning character.
I guess.
He's actually, that's probably my favorite incarnation of him. I went and watched The Greatest Story Never Told, and I think as an antagonist to Booster Gold, it's a good place for the character to be. The art is amazing. So go check out that episode in streaming. And that is your full Elongated Man, Ralph Dibny episode.
This is going to be a long episode. No pun intended.
There you go. So why don't we cruise right into recommended reading? Yeah?
Recommended reading is where Ashley's going to give you recommendations for what you should read if you're interested in Ralph Dibny. And if you want to pick up any of these books, just go to geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading. We have widgets there. You click on them, it'll take you to Amazon. You can buy the book, and a small little percentage of that book will come right back to the Geek History Lesson University.
Yes. I think my first two are pretty obvious choices. We talked about these stories at length and how they are Ralph's best stories. I'm definitely going to recommend picking up Identity Crisis.
Sure.
Watch Ralph's life fall apart. And then 52.
Woo!
The Jason's favorite series that we've recommended a number of times before. Watch Ralph put his life back together and then end it. And then I also want to recommend checking out Showcase Presents The Elongated Man Volume 1.
Oh, wow. They made that.
They've made more than one volume, guys.
You know,
and gals and non-gender conforming individuals.
Maybe there are a lot of Elongated Man fans out there, but I don't know. I don't see any in the studio.
Maybe there are. I recommend this. If you like this character, it's always good to go back to the origins. These are some of his earliest adventures. These are the backups from Detective Comics. These comics are reprinted very cheaply. They're in black and white, but if you want to see where the character came from and his Silver Age origins that really define who Ralph Dibny is, you can pick this up, and it's probably the most affordable option I'm giving you in this list. All right, let's roll right into discussion, where today we are so pleased to welcome a returning guest, Mr. Matthew Peterson, who you know from the Major Spoilers podcast, Flashback podcast, and teaching several of our previous episodes. Matthew, welcome back to Geek History Lesson.
Okay, thanks for having me. It's good to be back on the show, guys.
We're so glad to have you back as one of our long-standing experts and number one guest star of the Geek History Lesson podcast.
Does he hold the record now?
Oh, yes. He's, in fact, the only repeat guest star.
I am what you refer to as the editor emeritus, I believe, or something.
So, Matthew, as our standing comics expert and editor emeritus, I want to ask you, since we've been talking about Ralph Dibny to the fine folks listening on the other end of their earbuds, why do you think the Elongated Man has managed to last through various incarnations as long as he has?
Well, I think that there's two things going on with Ralph, and one of them is the fact that he is a character who's both comedic and super serious and is able to do both. You can put Ralph in the midst of the Super Buddies, or you can put Ralph in the Justice League Detroit, where there was more humor than the old school days, but you can also put Ralph in a murder mystery and have him work as this, Sherlock Holmes analog who can also stretch. And I think that's unusual, especially at DC, because most of the, I hate the term second tier or, B-level heroes, but most of the characters who aren't your Superman, your Batman, your Wonder Woman, the characters who have that multiple incarnations over years and years and years who appear in all sorts of stories. Characters like Ralph don't usually have that versatility. They're usually one-trick guys. Ralph is what Kurt Busiek refers to as your team hero. You don't ever really see just an Elongated Man story very often. He's usually a friend of the Flash or working with the Batman or part of the League. And the other thing that really sticks to me, at least in terms of what makes Ralph unique and long-term, is not Ralph at all. It's Sue.
Oh, you're a Sue man. I get it.
I am. And the thing that's really great about Ralph and Sue, there are a lot of married couples in comics. I mean, going back to the 40s, you had couples who later got married, or in very rare cases, you had couples who were already married when they started working. But Ralph and Sue when Ralph started out, he was this guy, he was kind of a schmendrick, and he showed up and irritated the Flash, really. And when he met Sue, and they fell completely in love, and they kind of became these weird rich guy jet-setting, almost Nick and Nora type characters. In fact, I think that's
I believe they have been referred to as such, yeah.
Yeah. You have that balance where Sue and Ralph, there are very few stories, almost no stories until the modern era, about strife in their relationship. And there aren't a lot of stories where it's like, oh, are Ralph and Sue going to break up? It's difficult. You don't see stable couples. And having Ralph be a stable couple who brings his non-powered wife with him to the Justice League satellite and brings her along as his contributing detective, his consultant, that's really cool. And I think that's part of the hook, because being stretchy is in no way unique. Stretchy guys are a dime a dozen.
Now, Matthew, I want to ask you, you seem to be a big fan of Sue. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Now, as a younger reader, and I mean, there's no age joke here, but from the times that I read Elongated Man and all the Justice League books and stuff like that, Ralph was very much a supporting character. So when I read Identity Crisis, I didn't really feel the death of Sue like I saw a lot of other readers. What is it about Sue? Is it primarily the marriage, or what is it about Sue that you love so much, or that you think makes her such a great character?
The thing about Sue that's wonderful is, first of all, Ralph is kind of a Dorcas. Ralph is
kind of.
Ralph is a total Dorcas. Ralph in a lot of, I want to say, and I can't remember if it was an original portrayal, but one of his portrayers was like, yeah, Ralph is Dick Van Dyke.
Oh,
Ralph,
I like that.
That would have been such a good casting choice.
As Dick Van Dyke. And you think of Ralph as this lanky, weird kind of everyman character. Sue is a super rich socialite. And marrying Ralph is actually a huge step down for Sue just in terms of her life and her growth growing up. So she completely fell in love with this doofus. And she's like, I love this guy. I'm going to just devote everything, and we're going to go and we're going to have fun and adventures and do things. And Sue, even the Identity Crisis story gave us a Sue that I recognized and liked. It didn't do things with her that I liked. But Sue is one of those characters who is never super. And it's very rare to have a character who's never super. If you go back to the dawn of the Marvel Universe and you look at supporting characters like Flash Thompson, at Rick Jones, at Betty Ross and her father, Thaddeus Ross. All of those guys have been around for decades and decades and decades, and all of them have gotten superpowers, sometimes multiple times. Sue never did. Sue was just this nice girl from Westchester who hung out with her doofus boyfriend, and the heroes liked her. She was likable. Together, she made Ralph more likable. She helped to kind of make him less of a detective nerd, less of a guy who literally goes out and fanboys after India rubber men in the traveling circuses. She gives him grounding. She gives him that solid relationship and that thing where no matter what happens with Ralph, he goes home to a happy marriage, a very loving relationship. And that is so rare in comics.
Now, I want to ask you something that Jason and I danced around throughout pretty much the entire lesson. Mm-hmm. And we talked about a little bit at the beginning. There's your Elongated Man, and then there's your Plastic Man. In the battle between the two, whose side do you come down on, either for superpowers, personality, whatever traits you want to put?
Well, in classic Matthew fashion, there are a few questions up with which I will not put. And this is one of those questions that I literally can't answer because, as you know, Plastic Man started out in the 40s at Quality Comics. And those original Plastic Man stories by Jack Cole are brilliant because of Jack Cole. And Jack Cole made Plastic Man a character who was both serious and comedic at the same time and gave him just weird kind of moments where he'd be in a superhero story and all of a sudden it's a Bigfoot cartoon doodly doo. When I was 7 or 8, Plastic Man was on TV every Saturday morning in the Plastic Man comedy show. So my cousin Elwood and I loved Plastic Man. But the very first issue of Justice League of America I ever bought, number 217, so George Perez cover with the whole satellite era league, your Red Tornado, your Zatanna, your Hawkman, your Green Arrow, your Black Canary. And there's this stretchy dude in the cover, and he's just running towards you, and his head is on this big thing. And I'm like, what the hell? So I wondered, what's this guy's deal? And then when I found out about it, it really is almost impossible for me to Sophie's Choice this one, because on the one hand, Plastic Man is the source material. Plastic Man is the thing. Plastic Man is where so many of these stretchy guys come from. And in a lot of ways, Ralph is created to kind of be Plastic Man or stand in for Plastic Man because, at the time, DC didn't know they had him. When Quality went out of business, DC actually technically owned the rights to publish those characters. But, in 1967, there's a Plastic Man series that I highly recommend that I'm like, this is terrible, but I highly recommend it. But Plastic Man became something so different, and Elongated Man evolved into something to where they're both awesome. And if I had to break the tie, I would always do the thing that I do. I lean to the original. I would give it Plastic Man literally by a goggles.
Where would you rank Reed Richards? Would you rank him higher in the stretchy guy standings than
Reed Richards is in your stretchy guy standards? Reed Richards is 6th overall.
6th?
Your stretchy guys. Okay. Because the stretchy guys go like this.
I know you have this list, so I want to hear it.
Number 1 stretchy guy. Hailing from Metropolis, Earth in the 30th century, Charles Foster Tane of the Legion of Superheroes, the legendary bouncing boy. That's your first stretchy guy. Second stretchy guy, Patrick O'Brien, better known to his friends as Eel, once dumped in a bottle of acid, or a barrel of acid, rather. And in the 40s, it was acid, but in the 90s, it was acid.
Oh, man.
Your number 3, of course, is your Ralph Dibny, your elongated man, the stretchable sleuth, the guy with the gross nose trick that he does. Your number 4 stretchy guy, James Bartholomew Olsen.
Yep.
Of Metropolis Earth, the Elastic Lad. And your number 5 stretchy guy, and you guys are now going to say to me, what's wrong with you? Are you out of your mind? And I'm going to say, yes, I am. Your number 5 stretchy guy is Helen Parr, Elastigirl and or Mrs. Incredible from Pixar's Incredibles.
Oh, that is a completely
That's totally acceptable
answer.
Yeah, because Helen does things with her stretchability that none of the others did. She actually, what she honestly does is kind of associates everything of what those characters do. She has a little bit of Bouncing Boy shtick, Plastic Man shtick, Elongated Man shtick, and even a little bit of Reed. And Reed ranks so low to me because it becomes clear, especially in modern stories, that his stretchability is not actually his shtick. It's like a side effect. It's something that he has and that he does, but his primary power is the fact that his brain is an atomic-powered missile from the planet Shmagegi. So, some people don't even use the stretchy powers with Reed. They're just like, he only uses them to reach across the lab and get the one spanner that he left on the wrong table. So.
That is like the number one use of Reed's stretchy powers is the thing he needs across the lab that he's not going to be bothered to walk to because both of his hands and 2 of his feet are already occupied doing something for sure.
Exactly. Reed's malleability is not actually Reed's primary superpower, unless you take the Reed that I think Grant Morrison did and maybe Mark Miller, which is that his ability to have the brain power, his big brain power, is literally him stretching his brain, which it kind of involves you not understanding biology, first of all, which is fine because it's comics, but it also involves, stretching, if you will, the point of what the word stretching actually means.
I see what you've done there. Very good.
See, but yes, Bouncing Boy always on the top.
Matthew, I'm going to hazard a guess that you've probably read more comics and a wider variety of comics than my co-host and I. So I do want to get, from your perspective, what the quintessential Elongated Man stories are.
The quintessential Elongated. Well, there's the one thing that you run into is in the 60s. You have that where he shows up. The quintessential stories, I would say, are the one where he's hanging out with the Flash and he suddenly decides, you know what? I don't want to have a secret identity. I want to be famous. So he tells the media, hi, I'm the Elongated Man. My real name is Ralph Dibny. Put me on TV, y'all. And so for the remainder of his tenure in, that pre-crisis 1961 to 1986 DC universe, he was, if not the only guy, one of the only guys who was publicly known. Ralph was just like kind of a fame whore. He was like, yes, I want to be a star. Everybody hang out. And this is my beautiful wife, Sue. And then you get to the moment, of course, the story where he meets Sue is a really good one. And then there's like a long kind of dead zone, sadly, for Elongated Man, where he's mostly second banana, the guy who's there but not there. Then you get in 1982 or 83, the Justice League Detroit era, where the Martians attack Earth. Spoilers. For
a story, 20-year-old storyline.
Right. 40-year-old story. A story before both of you were born in 1984, I think.
That is correct.
Martians attack the Earth, and the Justice League is gone. No Superman, no Flash, no Wonder Woman, no Supergirl, no Batman. They're all off doing their shtick. So Aquaman and John Jones lead the defense against the Martians, barely manage to fend off a Martian invasion of Earth. And Aquaman, as the sole founding member who's currently in the team, goes to the United Nations, the sponsor of the league, and says, per our charter, I am disbanding the Justice League. And he basically said that we can't work this on this ad hoc volunteer basis. And he said, anybody who can come and be 100% dedicated to the business of the league, you can be a part of my new league. And the first person there, Ralph Dibny, he's like, yep, I'm in. I will help you to build this new league. And so, they got the new heroes that everybody makes fun of. or made fun of because
Gypsy
now
and
they're
Vibe?
Gypsy and Vibe and Steel. And
Steel.
Nah,
right.
forget about him.
all of these guys who are now wonderful TV stars in the year 2017, or at least their sons or their cousins or some version of them are. The other member of that league, by the way, was Vixen.
Oh, yes. We have 2 Vixens on the TV now.
Right. So that's the thing. All of those guys that people have made fun of since 1983 are now on TV, and everybody's like, hey, these guys could work. And then after that, of course, you have during the actually, it's after the JLI years, or right after the JLI years, they formed the Justice League Europe. And Ralph and Sue joined the Justice League Europe for 2 reasons. 1, it's in Europe. And 2, they love Europe. So Ralph and Sue actually go and be a part of the European League, and we discover something very important. They're the only ones on the entire team who actually speak French. So a team headquartered en français, if you will. They're the only ones who can do the translating, which is kind of cool. And then, of course, as much as I hate to say it, a transformative episode is the Identity Crisis leading into 52 story.
I was wondering if you were going to be a pro-Identity Crisis in your recommendations.
I am and I'm not. It's a very important story for Ralph and Sue. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's a story that informs a lot of modern DC rather. It informs a lot of modern DC comics, and especially a lot of what becomes the New 52. But I don't necessarily recommend it as a good story so much as a historically important story, because that's when it transitions into 52, which is a good Elongated Man story, where without Sue, he's lost. He is lost. And this series opens. Superman's out on leave. Batman is hanging out with his sons in the Himalayas. Wonder Woman is, I don't know, hanging out with Artemis, making out with Artemis. Who
Doing
knows?
Wonder Woman things.
Right.
All of the above.
Wondering and being a woman, which, if that's a superpower, my house is full of them. But so Ralph is like at the brink of destruction when he finds a mystery, and the mystery gets weird. And at the end of the mystery, they may or may not have a Sue ghost hanging around with him, which is weird. And then, of course, he dies. I don't even remember where he dies. Does he die in 52?
He dies in 52 in the Tower of Fate.
He dies in the okay. So he dies, and then for a very brief time, Ralph and Sue are ghosts working with Batman and the Outsiders as detective ghosts. And this is super brief. This is like 20 minutes before the Blackest Night, where Ralph and Sue are almost like dead man possessing people. And Batman is like, I don't believe in the supernatural. Here are my friends who are ghosts. And then I want to say they were resurrected in Blackest Night, and that's the last thing that I remember seeing. Nope.
They're both in Secret Six in the New
Six.
52
I stand corrected.
for like a second, yeah.
Yeah, they tricked us because he wasn't actually going by his name at the beginning, and they tricked us, and Gail Simone tricked us, and he spent most of that series kind of shape-shifted into a big square-jawed detective schmucky guy, which was nice. Calling himself Big Shot, which is a terrible name.
He called himself Big Shot?
Yeah.
Big Shot. It's not a good name. But
yeah, that's quite terrible.
Well, I think they called him Big Shot as a placeholder.
I don't think they knew it was going to be Ralph in the beginning, and then they were like, "Why not Dibny's?"
Yeah.
Why not Ralph?
Big Shot, I believe, when they introduced him, was supposed to be, or it seemed to be, just a guy who could expand parts of his body, get bigger, and punch you. And of course, he's doing that. He's doing that with his elongated powers and punching you with a big rubbery head. So. But yeah, I would definitely have to say that as much as I don't want to, Identity Crisis is in there. 52 definitely in there. And that Suicide Squad is a run Suicide Squad. See, I've been drinking. I shouldn't do that. Secret Six. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Secret Six is a good story that I recommend, even though it goes too briefly, ends too quickly, and then is literally wiped away from continuity, which is... Now that I mention it, the story of the New 52 in a lot of ways.
Great.
But I'm not bitter.
Oh, that's... You can be bitter. We were bitter a little bit earlier.
We were. It was a weird Geek History lesson.
Matthew, thank you so much for joining us in the discussion. Tell people where they can find more of you all over the internet and all of the amazing things that you do.
You can always find me at majorspoilers.com. That's spelled major, then spoilers, then .com. And if you can't find it, I'm sure it'll pop up. I also spend a lot of time on the podcast there at Major Spoilers, including one where Ashley and I appear regularly together, the Major Spoilers podcast. It's true. And oftentimes, because she's young and I like to pretend that I'm young, we agree on things. And then our co-hosts are like, no, we're old and surly. And then it turns into a cool fist fight.
It's exactly like that every time.
You can follow me at Mighty King Cobra on the Twitter and also on the Tumblr, even though I don't really do anything on the Tumblr because I'm 46. And to be on Tumblr and have fun, I think you have to be between 17 and 29. I don't know.
I think that's probably accurate.
It is a law. And then if you find me on Facebook, I'll probably follow you back. But again, my mother-in-law follows me on Facebook, so I may not be any fun there.
And I do want to tease that if Matthew will have us, he's going to come and talk more Elongated Man in our Geek History Lesson extra podcast, which we are very much looking forward to.
Yeah, we'll be there. It'll be awesome.
Thank you, Matthew, for joining us and for stretching and elongating all of our brains and filling it with even more Elongated Man questions to think about. All right, let's roll into one of the final parts of our podcast, the Teaching Tweet.
The Teaching Tweet is where Ashley is going to tell you everything you need to know about Elongated Man in 140 characters or less, just like on Twitter. And if you go to @GHL Podcast, the podcast for this show, you'll see that tweet.
Elongated Man, the stretchy detective of the DC universe who a Flash editor demanded into existence.
All right. Very nice. Next, we're going to move into the final section of the podcast, the Mine University Honor Roll. And that's where, if you go over to iTunes and you give us a 5-star review, we're going to induct you into the honor roll. Who joins it this week, Ashley?
Joker 1990, who spells Joker with almost no vowels in it. He gives us...
Joker.
I'm assuming it's a he, but that's me projecting gender onto you, so I'm sorry if you're not a he. They give us 5 stars and say, dude, I love this podcast. That's one of the very few podcasts I listen to every episode, every day in order. And I'm on the True Detective Season 2 right now, and it makes my day go by fast at work. So thank you, Professor Jason and Professor Ashley. LOL, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Joker, thank you so much for that awesome review. And if you want to be like him and join the Geek History Lesson Mine University Honor Roll and get 5 stars, go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, and we'll read it on the show. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to download this show on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, basically Overcast, anywhere where you want to download podcasts. I bet you we are there. And Ashley, if they want to suggest this lesson, just like the amazing Mine University student who suggested this lesson, where can they do so?
Well, if you want to be as cool as Tim Lamb and suggest that we do Plastic Man or Bizarro or Mockingbird or anyone that you would like to see, you could do that at facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, geekhistorylesson.com, or again on Twitter at GHL Podcast.
That's right. And you can follow us on Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin for me, and at Ashley V. Robinson for Ashley. And also, don't forget, you can go over to patreon.com/Jawiin and support the show. You'll also, if you go over there and help out the show a little bit, you can listen to the Geek History Lesson Extra. It's the only place you can listen to that podcast. And this week, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Elongated Man with Matthew Peterson. We have a little bit of a longer conversation with him talking about how Elongated Man should come back into the DC universe and why he's gone. Mm-hmm. Where is he? And Matthew, I have a feeling, will like it a lot better than we will. So go over to patreon.com/Jawiin, support the show, get you a little bit something extra. And we really appreciate everybody that goes over there and does that. Thank you, our patrons.
Thank you.
All right, this has been Geek History Lesson. I am Jason Nose Smelling Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And Professor Ashley, will you please close out this Stretchalicious podcast?
The class is now dismissed.